Wasn't that an amazing documentary? I've seen it a number of times, and I've learned so much, and I really want to thank you for joining us to watch this film. And my friend, the wonderful Rosario Dawson, is going to join us. She starred, as you know, I'm going to brag on her a little bit, in a range of films, including Unforgettable and Top Five, Unstoppable, Rent, The 25th Hour, Men in Black 2, Kids, Sin City. She also, by the way, is the voice of Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, in the Lego Batman movie. And she won Best Actress in a Motion Picture Award at the 2009 NAACP Image Awards for her role in 7 Pounds. She starred as Claire Temple in the Netflix adaptation of the Marvel comic book series Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and The Defenders. And Rosario is a true activist. I know because we served together on the board of V-Day, a global organization that works to stop violence against women. She also co-founded Voto Latino in 2004 to help empower Latino millennials to vote. And she was honored with the President's Volunteer Service Award for her valuable contributions to the community. There's a lot more, but for time's sake, I'm going to stop there. And joining Rosario is Finian Makepeace, co-founder of the organization Kiss the Ground. He's a real thought leader in the field of regenerative agriculture and soil health. And he's developed training programs, workshops, and talks designed to empower people around the world to become confident advocates for this growing movement. I want to thank both of you so much for taking time to join us for this post-screening discussion, and thank you for making this film because it's really great. Rosario, let me start with you. How did you get involved in Kiss the Ground?
Finian and I were actually just going back and forth on that. He reminded me that my mom knows his wife's mom. It's a small world out there. But I think we met on the compost story. Just before we were talking about like the benefits and the lifespan and the necessity of a banana peel. And I did that with, Adrian Grenier and a couple other folks. And we've done another compost kind of story that we did with the great urban farmer, Ron Finley.
Ron Finley, yeah.
So we've just done, that was a Kiss the Ground compost story kind of thing as well, and talking about gardening and regenerative farming and all of that. So we've just been able to collaborate a few times over the years, because it's, there's a crew of us in the filming space that gets how important it is to create this narrative and share it through social media. And he's been really creative about that. So it's been really fun doing that with you.
Rosario, did anything surprise you when you were interviewing people on the streets in Venice Beach?
Oh, I think the thing that surprised me most was, the disconnect between information on knowing why climate change is an issue and what to do about it. Like the urgency feels there. As soon as you started asking people that we wanted to talk about climate change, they were like, oh yeah, you can interview me. But then it was just a real pivot about what they actually knew. And the one thing that I heard often was all the organizing I've seen around things like single-use plastics. And I've worked with Dan Jacobson, who used to be at Environment California. We went to lobby in Sacramento to ban single-use plastic bags, and getting unusual coalitions like the Grocers Union and everyone together and trying to get it, district by district across California, getting rehabilitated gang members from Homeboy Industries who are putting up solar panels to say, hey, this matters in the hood as well. It's not just a surfer coastal problem. This is something that's happening and affecting communities everywhere. And so it's been just like really powerful to see that those campaigns, because everyone goes, oh, I don't use plastic straws anymore. I don't do this or that. But the greater problems around regeneration and carbon capture and all that kind of stuff, really big blind spots.
Well, that's important to know as organizers, right? In 2018, you produced an award-winning documentary called The Need to Grow, which is really fantastic. And folks who are watching, you can watch Need to Grow on Amazon Prime. So clearly, the issue of healthy soil and regenerative agriculture has been a focus for you, Rosario, for quite a while. And I know that documentaries help educate people. Do you think they actually motivate people, though, to take action on important issues? For example, we have to change our extractive mindset to a regenerative one. Can documentaries do that? This is for you too, Finian.
Yeah, I think what I love is that there's such an appetite for them now. I was going and watching documentaries about Monsanto and Terminator seeds because I walked by a great indie theater in New York and happened upon it, and then would walk out freaked out about GMOs and stuff and looking around and no one else getting it, because if they did not go into that theater, they were just not going to have access to it pretty much otherwise. But now people are listening to podcasts, they're watching these TED Talks, they're really seeking these documentaries, and you can see it with things like Seaspiracy and stuff, like just really taking off during quarantine. So I do think that there's, and having interviewed people in the streets, when we are really intentional about those talking points, it does break through. So I think it shows that we have a real opportunity right now, especially, I know we're going to talk about this coming up later with the farming bill that is going to be up for a vote in the next couple of years, to really galvanize the community that is getting these pieces of information from these great different documentaries to make a real impactful change legislatively, that, as much as, with Seaspiracy, they're trying to talk about everyone should just go vegan. That would be great. But the thing that's really going to make the difference is if we change the laws and make it so that regardless of what your eating choices are or how great you are about recycling, that the corporations and the people who are doing the polluting actually are held accountable.
That's right. The climate crisis and the food crisis and the oceans crisis is not something we can just make individual changes and really affect. It has to be policy changes. What were you going to say, Finian?
Yeah, I mean, echoing what Rosario is saying, thank you both. It's great to be here with you, first off. But I think what Rosario is getting at is really critical, where I talk about it as like the level of priming that you've had. And I think so many people, especially those in my generation and younger, have gotten plenty of priming around some of these critical threat issues. And I think where we have a lot of work to do is doing more of the offering of what the solutions are, where those solutions can be. So why documentaries such as this or Need to Grow are critically important is they're not just another, here's the thing you have to be aware of or afraid of or essentially scared of. It's something that's offering a viable, practical, and economically viable and practical solution to something that we're all facing. So this is what I think is critical, is when we're saying here's information, but also saying how are we posing it and offering an option for someone to grab onto the solution. And then where I've really gotten excited is how do you say, okay, here's the information, here's your excitement moment. Now here's how you can get involved at the next layer. So something with Kiss the Ground, for example, is our soil advocate training, which you mentioned in my introduction, but I'm saying it's great that you got this aha moment. Now we've been doing 8 years of work, or our organization has. Take everything we've done to prepare you to advocate your politicians or the people who are making those laws to be empowered. Rosario is talking about her laundry list of things that she's been involved in and advocating for. I want to make sure anyone who is inspired enough about this subject can leap ahead so that 7 months from now, 5 months from now, they feel confident enough to walk into a local town hall meeting or walk in somewhere who they know a politician and deliver the message and feel confident about it, because that's what I think we need. Millions of more people who feel empowered, just like you, Jane, just like you, Rosario, to carry these messages.
Right. Finian, explain the difference between sustainable and regenerative.
My favorite thing. Great question. I'm particularly fascinated by this because of really where we are. Like I just mentioned, we've all kind of heard the alarm bells. And to get into our heads the situation we're facing, there's obviously too much carbon in the atmosphere. Most people are aware of that right now. But when we talk about the level of degradation, meaning the making of land not function anymore. So you look at a barren, desertified field that used to be fertile farmland. That land isn't functioning anymore. It's been depleted, degraded. So what we talk about around the world for arguably the past 10,000 years in many populations, as their population size increased, they've been degrading the landscapes, making it so when it rains, the water doesn't get absorbed, making it so that these lands are turning to desert essentially. So you talk about degradation. So I'm curving down here to recognize today we're at a very degraded state across the entire world in almost every region and continent. To sustain now, the definition of sustain is to be able to be used without being completely used up or destroyed. So just imagine luckily, right, we're going to probably keep degrading, but magical chance we sustain everything right now. This is not a good place for humanity to continue into the future. So we're arguing we have to regenerate. Regenerating is rebuilding, restoring something to its optimal condition or ability to function. So we say, okay, we can regenerate and then we can sustain. So we're not saying sustainable is wrong. We're trying to say sustainability is ahead of its time. We want people to be thinking regeneratively, thinking when they see the degraded landscape, wait, California, it was a fertile place here. This whole Central Valley out here where we are, it used to not be a desert. It used to be one of the biggest wetland areas in the country. So when we look at what something was, we can find how we as humans can be stewards, regenerators to bring it back to its healthy functioning state. And that's really the definition of sustainable is not enough right now. We have to be aiming for regeneration, and we can.
How is carbon both the problem and the solution?
The best part of this all, Jane, is that the only way that we're going to build back healthy soil. Now, everyone close your eyes, picture healthy soil in your head. It's dark, it's rich, it's aggregated together. That beautiful, dark, rich soil, the stuff that makes it soil, the organic matter, is 50% carbon. Where does that carbon come from to build the healthy soil? Only in one place. The carbon is from the atmosphere. Either plants are pumping it through their roots, as you saw in the movie, exuding it into the ground to feed the microbes, or the plants are decomposing, and some of that is being turned back into that carbon in the soil. But we're saying we need to take the problem in our atmosphere that's currently causing greenhouse effect, bring it down into the soil to literally rebuild functioning soil again. So the problem is the solution. Technically, the material, the building blocks of the solution are currently hanging out in our atmosphere, causing a problem.
Mm-hmm. This is a question for both of you. The climate movement is fighting for a regenerative economy, right? That puts justice first and doesn't leave workers and communities behind. How can the solutions from this documentary be part of that economy? How can we make sure that we don't leave farmers behind, especially farmers of color and family farmers?
Mm-hmm.
Rosario, you want to start on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's including them. I know, and with our film, we got a lot of flack for that, and I think rightly so. You know, part of the big problem is we didn't get here by just accident. It's been very intentional for a very long time, and the powers that be to make farming and this entire system be solely about yield and not at all about the better goodment of community and representation, of the fact that the people who are picking our food are in danger. They're not getting water. They're not getting paid well. They're not being, they're getting raped. They're getting all the different kinds of things. They're being deported. There's so much stuff that our food systems are connected to. This is immigration. This is climate change. It's all of it. And the narrative has to encompass all of that, because the people who are on the front lines oftentimes of regeneration and sustainability that aren't necessarily using that language, but are just the proper stewards of the land, have been Black and Indigenous people who are usually the first ones killed. Like the activists who are out there on the front lines across the world, you're seeing being targeted and assassinated and kidnapped and all kinds of things, because this is big money. Like, you know, I talk about this with Corey, and he, you know, people talk about pharma, big pharma PH, but actually big pharma F actually has way more power. I mean, it trumps everything else in the space when you think about lobbyists and the money that's there. I mean, this is connected to our trade, everything. So it's really critically important to recognize that history and make sure that there's a true coalition moving forward, so that that generational history that's suffered so much can be amplified and can be recognized and can lead the way, because that's what we need. We're not going to resolve this without being in community with each other.
Right.
Yeah, and to add to that, Rosario, 100%, it's so systemic, and it has been perpetuated for so long in this country, in the United States. Just to look here, that it's almost hard to distinguish why it is the way it is. Again, his history is incredibly important as we look to what we're trying to, how we're trying to change the system and what we're trying to create. And the beautiful thing I wanted to put into perspective around this regenerative framework is so much of it, Jane, is people moving out of the sustainable or conservation mentality to regeneration. And there's something more in that than just building back functioning land. It's building back functional communities, and it's building back a mindset that's looking at how well is our watershed doing, how well is our community doing. And when you're building back, as we say, FDR said, a nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. We say a nation that rebuilds its soil rebuilds itself. And this is an opportunity to have especially indigenous place-based knowledge integrated into the conceptualizing of how this can happen region by region across the United States, for example. But then again, where we're starting to be inclusive, it's more than just making it equal. It's just about making it equitable and saying, how are we going to make a step above and beyond? Because the cool thing about regeneration is it does remove the scarcity mentality that logically all of us are in. I'm going to have to give up some of mine if they're going to get some of theirs, just to, you know, in quotes, right? Generality here. But that's one thing that's really beautiful about this. And I'm not saying it's going to be magically fairy dust easy. This is going to take stretching, and it's going to take coalition work to build those connections so that we see that there is a long-term outcome that will be beneficial for everyone if we're starting to say this has to be for people who are treated poorly right now. They have to be in this equation as well. Otherwise, we don't hit the mark of true regeneration, and we don't hit the mark of really building back better. I mean, that's where we have an opportunity here that's so extraordinary, because you look region by region across the world where regeneration has happened, you do have the most impoverished, the most struggling people being able to be lifted up because their land is providing what they need, and they're able to be a part of it.
In a time of like climate refugees and everything that's going on, we need to be on the same page with this. And one of the things that I think is so important with, you know, and I know you're doing another film, Finian, and why I keep wanting to do more films and storytelling in this space is because people also don't even agree with what regeneration means. You know, for you got these crops, they monocrops, and they go, okay, cool. So if we just don't till and we throw some cover crops on there, does that count? Can we grow GMOs and that still count as regeneration? Like, so there's a real discussion and breakdown that is happening right now about what really quantifies and what's really how urgent and how big do our steps need to be, and how can we bring people along who are making choices short term, because financially it's really hard to pivot and do things differently than they've done it for so long.
And that, just really quick on that financial side, is I don't think it's going to be hit more in this next movie that Josh and Rebecca are working on. But what is so important is that we have the opportunity, in my opinion, to come together and not have it's either this way or this way. And I just explained that a second ago in some ways. But when we talk about economics and we talk about transition, this isn't transitioning to organic where you have to wait 3 years and then you get a certification. And that's the only reason that you're getting a better price for your crop. No, you're able to be actually reducing your inputs. You're able to start your transition no matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, what your mindset is, what your religion is. I don't care. You can start healing your land. Therefore, you're starting to regenerate it. This is a trajectory that arguably, with the masters of this, the people who are the best at regenerating land that we've seen right now, who have the best results in the shortest period of time economically and technically, they're saying that we don't even know what healthy soil is in the United States. We don't even know what regeneration is. So everyone who's deep in this is saying this is a trajectory. But one thing I wanted to say in that is, as we scope big and as we look to the future, we don't want to polarize and isolate other people just because we're saying it's got to be this triple gold standard, blah, blah, blah over here, because we need it now. We need it today and tomorrow happening across the board. And I believe as people see this happen on their own land, the mindsets do shift. The understanding of community, the understanding of us versus them is starts to subside. So to let our fear and our guard down, we're going to have to understand and live inside of regeneration. And that often does start step by step. And that's where this is a big context conversation. It's going to take a lot of work.
Indigenous people have, as you know, deep wisdom about the earth and how to sustain it and treat it. Are you looking to them for their ideas about how we can heal and what we've already harmed?
100%. And it's easier said than done. And I think a lot of us who are educated, especially for me, coming from my background of who I've been trained to trust in thinking, in research, in science, I have subconscious training in that, to say the least, right? And so it takes me exercising, thinking about how am I going to make sure that I'm expanding my own limitations inside of this. So Kiss the Ground is working on a very big and broad and hopeful campaign called Regenerate America. And it's a big, audacious goal for the next farm bill. And we're bringing together an exceptional coalition. And we're saying that right at the beginning, we got to get the folks who've been doing this on the ground in different communities. We have to make sure that they're involved to help us all help ourselves, because it can't happen again where we leave indigenous place-based knowledge as an outside concept. It has to be deeply integrated into everything.
Yeah. Finian, there's been a lot of talk about fossil fuel companies using green projects to offset carbon pollution from dirty parts of their operations. How do we make sure that soil conservation and other ways of sequestering carbon aren't used by polluters to get out of cleaning up their businesses?
I wish there was an easy answer for that. Can we do another half hour add on to this? Well, the easy answer is the simple answer right now is I don't think that we're going to stop it just because it's not a good idea, because generally it's not a great idea. But there are ways to make the generally not good idea exceptionally better when it comes to 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out, on what it is actually, what the tool set is that the USDA rolls out. So we're working tirelessly to right now make sure, as those plans are starting to unfold, that if they go forward, that there is a really deep connection to the communities that it impacts and to the people who will ultimately be doing the work. And so that this is advantageous potentially for everyone, but not another design thing that essentially lets people just, as you said, pay the middleman and have a tap on their shoulder to not have to be responsible.
Mm-hmm. Final question for both of you. What can the Fire Drill Friday audience do to support your film?
Rosario, you want to go first?
First share it. I also hope that they go to Kiss the Ground and see all of the other initiatives and things that they can share, including Compost Story and other things that they've created, which I think are really helpful and really good. Having grown up in New York and learning about people like Bette Midler, who was so instrumental in making sure that there were community gardens, which was my beginnings in the environmental movement, was because I lived in a concrete jungle and got and understood and appreciated the benefit of having those natural spaces. And so I think, everyone is media now. You know, we don't need, you know, thank God for the Bette Midlers and such of the world who have been front and center of this for so long. But now every single person has an opportunity to really be front and center and share it to their community. So I hope they share this. I hope they share Need to Grow, which I think is also really has some great solutions and shows you individuals who are tackling this problem with urgency and innovation and with just light. So I think you feel really energized after watching these films, as opposed to some of the other more doomsday environmental films that make you feel so overwhelmed. You feel like there's no place to start or nothing to do. Because we need to encourage people, and this is, you know, we know that, Jane, with V-Day and 1 Billion Rising, which focused on gardens this past year, and how many people started being in nature, doing more picnics, being out there. I think there's a real appreciation and understanding that is an interesting kind of silver lining to what this pandemic and quarantine has brought, where people have recognized how much these green spaces are so critical. And how they can be participatory, making sure that they exist for future generations. Right. So if people use their media to share this information and hopefully join this new movement, that's going to be a whole huge signature campaign that Finian just mentioned earlier, to make sure that this farm bill that's coming up resonates with all of this incredible information, and that we don't just handcuff ourselves moving forward legislatively to not implement these incredible ideas.
Why does it have to be 2 years? Why is it going to take so long to get this farm bill?
It doesn't. If people want to, just because the farm bills are every 5 years or so that they're voted on, Jane. So they're not annually, but there are things happening right now. So anyone right now, any of your representatives, please push on them that soil is infrastructure. You can call any representative you know right now who's federal and tell them that soil is infrastructure. If we want clean water, if we want healthy food, if we want to have a place to store carbon, like, there are so many aspects of this that fall under infrastructure, but it's not just gray cement that's infrastructure. Soil is the critical infrastructure that made this country have any ability to function anyway. But on the long shot, I'm going to try to be quick here, is telling anyone out there, any of you, welcome to the movement, you're in. Come on, join this movement. Sean King's book is a great reminder of this, of like, you can have tons of things you support, but if this is something that you're really passionate about, this could be your thing for the next 20 years. Why I think it could be is because regeneration and soil health is a coming paradigm phenomenon, an exciting movement that has a place for you. If you get into it now, I promise you, you will have an incredible impact, because the folks who are doing this now, I was not involved with this. Rosario wasn't involved with this. Gabe Brown wasn't a farmer. He wasn't raised as a farmer. Like, just recognizing from your universities to your people you know who are in food business or starting your own food business or getting involved with politics, there are so many ways to add to this movement. And it's not just the activists and the farmers. We need people who are advertisers, who are bloggers. We need people who are all in these other genres to say, this is my movement. I'm all about the regenerative movement, because I believe that we as humans can be stewards of the earth, and it's got to happen now, because our generations are the ones that are, the next generations are going to be the ones that are so affected by a degraded planet that it doesn't matter how much carbon is going to be in the atmosphere. If our land doesn't work, we don't survive, folks. So thank you so much, Jane. Anyone who is out there, please take soil advocate training. We want you to be fully empowered to deliver this message, but greatly appreciate the time. And thank you everyone for watching. We really want to meet you and hang out and rock this revolution with you.
Thank you both so much. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Jane.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.